What's up, everybody? Welcome to a great Saturday morning here at Win Daily Sports. We are week 4 college football. Got a lot to talk about today, some big lineups to go over, and so much more on the CFB DFS next month. As always, I'm Dave Gloeckner, and this is Joel Schreck, and we are bringing you what we think is the way to build our lineup today on this huge 13-game slate sitting here on September 21st, 2024. It's like we're kind of in the meat of the college football season already. We're only week 3 of the NFL, but college football is off and rolling. If you want to get into some of the major championships, you got to start qualifying sooner than later because it's going to be here before you know it. So, Joel, looking at this slate already, I think it's a tough battle to find out where to attack, and 13 games makes you have to get a little bit kind of selective.
You're for sure right. It's an interesting slate, especially for week 4. Not straightforward. We've had a few weeks already where there was like 3 or 4 spots that were clear target spots. This week, it's kind of there's less clear game environments that you want to target. It takes a little bit more strategy. So I'm excited to break it down with you, Dave.
I am too. Chef Vortex, thanks. I mean, he's a great caller, great advocate in our Discord. Yes, news. We had a big takedown over the weekend. Thursday night. I was able to take down single entry, 5-unit, win. So, and Joel has won many other big ones. So you're talking to people that kind of have been there, done it, but I mean, still need to do it more, obviously. And that's why we're here trying to work together, and hopefully you're the next big winner here too.
Wait, hold on. Before we even dive in, Dave, you hit a big tournament on Thursday. This isn't just a rollover. That was a big hit. 25,000 entries. You split first, but that was a great entry in the Jets game. You had to sweat it out a little bit at the end, but you got the win. That's what we do here on the show. We're trying to help you kind of find ways to get those big wins, beat 25,000 people. Before we move into the college, tell us what the lineup was.
Yeah, I went with Aaron Rodgers as the captain, and it was a kind of built around that. The strategy there, obviously, I thought he was going to be lower owned out of all the captains, and I thought if there was a chance to attack New England, it was through the air, and it was Rodgers' kind of first home game too. You got to recognize, so in front of the New York crowd. So I did that, and then I could build around Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Conklin, who was invisible. I was able to get in there and then use the Jets D. That was a 5-1 lineup. Demario Douglas was the big hit on New England. But yeah, I had to sweat it out, Joel. It was Jets D against Alan Lazard in the last couple minutes of the game. I took the lead. But as you know, with defenses, Patriots have the ball in the last 2 minutes. Any points against would have killed me and knocked me down. Luckily, they got a sack near the goal line, closed it out. I jumped. Woke up a few people in the house, but that's all right. It was a good one.
When you win 10K, you can wake a few people up. That's totally okay. But I'll add, I really liked your strategy there. I mean, it's way more uncommon to go 5-1 in a showdown slate. So you went with 5 Jets. It's how you made yourself a little bit different. Obviously, the Jets had a really good game. That's where you're able to separate yourself. But that's the type of strategy that allows you to kind of outbid 25,000.
I agree, and I'm getting a little haters on here. Listen, 12-2 last night, buddy. I mean, we had a big win. The Phillies. I gotta wear it. Come on. No, I was actually, a small story before we get into it. I actually went down to Camden Yards last night and watched the Orioles. We try and do a road trip every year, and with the family, try and knock out every stadium. So we were due to Baltimore. So I should have worn orange for you, but no, Phillies big win last night. Huge series. Oh, Joel, he's talking about Joel wearing the maroon. Okay, I thought he was hating on me.
Wait a minute. Guys, this is a college football show. Rutgers got a big game today. This has nothing to do with the Phillies. This is New Jersey, Rutgers. No worries. I'm a Mets fan. We're okay. We're good here.
Yeah. No, I tell you what, the Mets are dangerous. As an aside, that's a team that can get, it has the Rangers look, has the Phillies look, that kind of hot wild card team. So, yeah, definitely. All right, we got a lot checking in. Thanks, everyone. Warren, a regular. Love it. Let's just real quick, Joe, last week. I'll tell you, I had an okay week. I didn't have a great week. I got to be honest here. But I felt like we were in the right areas once again, where I didn't, WVU Pitt was a huge, big one that we were able to pair up. But, some of the games that I just didn't, I guess, invest enough in. Where was it? Who had the huge game last week? I'm trying to look here. someone threw like 5 touchdowns early. I'm like, why weren't we there? It's going to come to me. But while we get to it, we were on the WSU quarterback, Mateer. He had another huge game last night, 58 points. I think we were there. How'd you do last week?
Last week I had a pretty good week. I cashed for a pretty good amount. Didn't hit any of the top prizes, but I think I'm comfortable in that we're finding a little consistency with getting good plays. Right? I think in order to hit big, you got to hit on the ceiling plays. And so I'm really focused this week on shifting to like what players have the upside, have the ceiling potential. Because depending on what types of tournament you're playing, if you're going for big GPPs, right, there's guys that are safe that are going to get you 20 points, but really don't have big game upside. Those guys are great for cash lineups in small tournaments, but not as good for the GPP. So understanding some of those different plays and how to strategically go about the slate and the different types of tournament you're playing is critical. So yeah, I go back to last week was pretty good. You know, we're finding some of these gems in each week. I'm looking forward to hopefully finding a few on this big slate this Saturday and breaking down the games with you right now.
Absolutely. And it was Bowman Warren, but it was also Riley Leonard. That's the one that was on my mind in a 66-7 game. He put up just about the same as Bowman, 37 to 35, 36. So, but yeah, Bowman, we had a little bit shares of, and Stribling obviously was huge. Davion Taylor, huge. We had those. It was that quarterback kind of, those two being the top 2 QBs. Milroe we had, I thought was a little bit of a surprise, especially, from a Bowman perspective, a guy that probably doesn't ever run the ball. He had no rushing yards last week. So, yeah, it's hard to get there.
I'll add, especially in college football with this many games and GPPs, like, while, yes, on paper, Garrett Green was probably the best play, it's really hard to justify a guy who's going to be 40% owned with there's so many games, where there's so many other opportunities, right? There's a higher likelihood that the guy who's 40% owned doesn't come through. Right. So again, the chalk plays often do come through too. So it doesn't mean fade all the chalk, but some of the obvious plays you don't always have to go all in on.
Right. Exactly. But it's new week, 13 game slate. We'll roll through each game for everyone where we're thinking, but there's going to be some that we're going to mow through pretty quick just because not a lot of value, low points. Before we get into that and we're opening it up, there's about, I'll say 5 games that I've starred that I'm sure we'll get into that have that nice point spread, high total. UF Mississippi State at 6.5, 58. WVU Kansas, a minus 156.5. Great game environment. 2.5 point spread in Auburn, Arkansas, 56 point total. Arizona State, Texas Tech, and we'll get into that one, I'm sure. 3.5 with 58.5. That's the highest total on the board. And Georgia Tech Louisville fits my model too at 10 with 56.5. We also have some 56.5s out there, but you're getting in the 3 touchdown range with UCLA and LSU. So those 5 kind of hit the core of close game high totals. And we saw it once again last week with we said it, Pitt WVU, close game high total. That's your perfect game environment. Hopefully we get some of those today.
You should be doing that every week, but especially a week with 13 games. You should 100% have your main game environments highlighted, know where you want to get the most exposure. It's really helpful to help you narrow down the most valuable target spots in a 13-game slate.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump in. And one of them is the first game on the board. Listen, Florida can't stop anybody. It is embarrassing. Texas A&M threw in a backup quarterback last week, and he ran and threw all over him. It's they're asking for Billy Napier's head on a platter out there in Florida. It's not going to get pretty anytime soon. One of the cool things about Miss State, they're worse. They lost to Toledo at home. Somebody bad. It was bad. But they have a quarterback that I kind of loved 2 years ago, and Blake Shapen, who came over from Baylor. He hasn't been bad. It's been the defense. So I'm really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think they got 2 really bad defense here. There's an opportunity for points to be scored. It's a good game environment. On the Florida side, I think Montreal Johnson's interesting. Ownership might be down on him as he got shut down last week. I'm not going to overreact to one game. I think there's going to be much more opportunity to run against what's been a below average Mississippi State defense, especially run defense. On the receiver side, with Wilson out, there's definitely value on some of these receivers here at Florida too. At 5,000, Elijah Badger will probably be a little bit chalky, but he's a big play guy. I think there's definitely going to be some big opportunities for Badger at 5K, plenty of upside. He'll definitely be in my rotation. Deke, I don't like as much as Badger, but I think he has upside as well. I would play one of the two. I would not play both. And on the other side of the coin, Kevin Coleman Jr. is very interesting. He's their number one receiver. He's been pretty good to start the year. They're getting him into the ball. At only 5,500, he seems underpriced. I do think he's going to be chalky, a little bit higher owned than I'd like, but at 5,500, I certainly see some upside there.
Yeah, so Mississippi State's the worst rushing defense on this slate, giving up 213.7 yards a game, good for 121st in college out of 134 teams. So I'm with you. I think, a little bit of a disappointing game, 5,900 for Johnson. He's my favorite play in this game. I'm off any Florida quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do there. Mertz, Lagway, in between. But you do, Joel, I think you make a point. Pick one pass catcher. I'm fine with that because Miss State isn't that great at the pass defense either. But on the other side, I do think there's a little value in Chapin. Florida is 101st in pass defense, 92nd in pass defense. The key here is we just don't know. You can attack Florida in so many different ways. They're 101st in rush defense, 92nd in pass defense. So be careful. But Coleman, I think you can run naked, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So I think there's a lot of value in this game. No tight ends really to speak of. But if you really want to get down there, Trey Orr's been okay at 3,700, but I think there's just better value across the slate today. Lots of 4 and 5Ks we can get involved in. We don't have to dip down there.
I agree. I actually think both of these tight ends are worth mentioning. I just think, to your point, there's limited upside, or neither one of these guys are going to be a game breaker type play. Yep. If they are able to get you 3 or 4 receptions and find the end zone, then they can get value, but I don't see a ceiling game from either one of them.
Yep, sounds good. So, yeah, maybe Chapin, no Florida quarterbacks, Florida running back, one receiver from each side. Like it.
Boom. All right. Ohio State Marshall. For me, this is a stay away game. I think Ohio State runs away with it because it won't be close. I just don't see any of these guys getting enough volume to hit. The Ohio State running backs are unbelievable, but they're both 7K and they share carries. So without any of them getting anywhere near 20 carries, could they get there in limited time? Yes, but I think there's better spots to target. So the only guy in this game I might have any exposure to is Jeremiah Smith, who's the number one receiver now at Ohio State. He's a freshman. He looks like a stud. I could see him maybe having a few big plays, but even in the lineups I do have exposure to Smith, it'll probably be very few.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would love to tell you Will Howard's a good play, but 13 game slate versus this spread, it's funny. It's 39.5 and the total 52.5. So your implied total for Ohio State's in the mid 40s and, below 7 for Marshall. So I tend to think nothing on Marshall, and I just get a little worried when you get so high like that with better quarterback options out there. I think Howard will have a good day, but I don't think you need to go there. If you want to get lucky and play one of the Ohio State running backs, because that's what's going to have to happen. One has to have the bigger runs, the explosive runs, and pop for like 25 to 30. I would lean Judkins. He's just to me, he's an NFL. We already know, great back. So I think there's a 7,100 is not terrible for a guy that could put up 25, 30. So I lean Judkins a little bit. And like you said, Jeremiah Smith is great. So
I'm with you on that. I would prefer Judkins of the two as well. All right. Houston, Cincinnati. This is interesting because out of nowhere, it looks like Houston's defense might be pretty good now. They were like the worst in the country last year, and now they've so far through 3 weeks, they look like they're okay. So actually, no, they look better than okay. They look pretty good, which means you probably don't want to target them too much. However, I'm not 100% bought in. I do see that they've looked good. I still think there's potential for some teams to do some things to them offensively. My favorite place to target them is at running back with Corey Kiner at 5,200. He's just underpriced. He's the best player on this offense. They've been getting him the ball 15 to 20 times the last couple of weeks. He has plenty of upside. 5,200 is a mispricing, in my opinion. So I will have some exposure to Kiner here. And as we mentioned before, Xavier Henderson, transferred from Florida, has been there for 2 years. He's their go-to guy. They force feed him the ball. I think he has some potential as well in this game as a guy who's just going to be fed targets. He's a clear-cut number one option. The last guy on Cincinnati I'm interested in is Joe Royer, the tight end. He has become one of their mainstays in this offense. If there is a 3K guy that can reach upside, I do think it's Royer if he finds himself falling into the end zone.
Yeah, I agree. It's odd with Houston. Like they did shut down Oklahoma, but what we've seen out of Oklahoma hasn't been too impressive. We're going to get some tests today and see really what they are. But Arnold seems to be not quite there yet, understandably so. But the other two teams I played, I mean, Rice is 110th in offense, like in the nation. So I kind of like throw that one out the door. But they did get smoked by UNLV 27-7, and they let up 200 rushing yards. So I think you have a good like point there. If we're going to attack them a little bit, I don't mind the rushing game and Kiner. Xavier Henderson is the only receiver I'll play. I've watched 2 of Cincinnati's games. He is the most targeted guy. They will spread it out, but the other 4 or 5 guys split time. Like they're not worth taking because they just really rotate about 5 or 6 receivers during the game, but they leave Henderson out there. So I like that on that side. One thing I'll say about Cincy is they are 126, the worst on this slate against the pass. I haven't loved the way Houston has attacked the game, but Dominic Smith at 6,300 would be very interesting to me because he can run the ball a little bit. Obviously, he's had a rough start to the year, but put up 25.3 last week, Joel. I think you get good value there.
Yeah, 6,300. I think you got a point, especially a quarterback who also can run with his legs and maybe rush a touchdown in. There's definitely upside. So I agree. If you're looking for value, Donovan Smith could be an interesting play. And as you said, if you want to get some exposure to this passing game, I wouldn't be shy with Mekhi Muse at 3,900. If you're looking for a value play, he's the number 2 option. He's very explosive. He can make a big play. I think there might be some value in a sneaky upside with Muse.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those games. I mean, total's 48. It's not terrible, but it's in that -3, that low point spread environment. So we could have some back and forth, could even get to overtime. So I think I'll play a little of this game, maybe 2 pieces max.
I love it. All right. I really find this Kansas-West Virginia game interesting. It's a game environment and a point total that you want to be involved in. But both of these teams kind of spread the ball out. There's not a lot of concentrated usage on either team. So it's really hard to find clear-cut targets on each team other than the quarterbacks. Obviously, they're both dual threat quarterbacks that run and throw. So both quarterbacks are squarely in play. And Devin Neal is probably the best player in this game, the Kansas running back. So at 7,400, it's pricey, but I am totally willing to pay that price for Neal, who has plenty of upside against a pretty bad West Virginia rush defense. On the other side, they do split carries, White and Donaldson. Donaldson is the leader. He gets more carries. He's priced less than White at 4,900. He's underpriced in what I think will be a back and forth game. Donaldson's in play because he's a value at under 5K. It's hard to kind of narrow down and target any of these receivers because they do spread the ball out so much. So great game environment. I think in these obvious spots, I will have some exposure to the quarterbacks and running backs, but I'm not going to. I don't really think there's too many receivers that you can get behind.
I really want to love Jalen Daniels, but he's come out terrible so far. I mean, 6 interceptions in 3 games. One of them was like against Lindenwold or something like that. Lindenwood. I mean, it hasn't been good. I can't believe they're 1-2. I can understand the loss to Illinois. Illinois had revenge on their mind. I think they lost by like 40 to Kansas last year. I got that. But losing to UNLV was a big step in the wrong direction for Lance Leopold's team. So, but West Virginia's second worst in pass defense on this slate. So I go back to my original point. We got to get to a Jalen Daniels breakout game. If there's going to be one, I feel like it's today. I'm willing to roll the dice, especially in GPPs. But yeah, the safest is Devin Neal. And then I'll say Grimm, like you said, they spread around, but Grimm had that one big game to start the season. Had one bad game last week, but that West Virginia pass we saw it last week. They couldn't stop Pitt late in the game. I think there's some value in Grimm. If you pair Grimm and Daniels, I would leave Neal off because you're going to want to see if those two. West Virginia's been in a couple shootouts so far. Like you said, the rush defense has been bad. But on the other side, it's green or nobody for me for West Virginia. I like CJ. I do. But Kansas has been good against the run, letting up just 111 yards a game.
All right. There you have it. All right. NC State Clemson. NC State has been surprisingly bad. Not a team that I want to really target here. Clemson, as we know, always has a pretty good defense. I think some people are going to be playing this Clemson passing offense. I'm not buying into it. For me, it's going to be Maffa. I will play Maffa. I think Maffa has a breakout game today. At only 6K, he's priced fairly. I like Maffa a good deal. He'll be one of my highest owned running backs. But other than that, I'm going to have very little exposure to this game.
Yeah, the only one. I mean, I'd say because we like to highlight some tight ends here. I think Brennan still has some value. I know he's kind of priced up a little bit in Clemson's offense, but at 4,800, I still think there's some value in him in the passing game. I don't know where he had 7 catches for 100 last week, so at least like they're throwing to him. And NC State's pass defense is bad.
No, I'm with you on that. I think there's some upside with Brennan Sewell. Brennan Sewell's a good player. And if he's featured at all, then I think he can get you to that ceiling game. So I think you're definitely onto something with that call. The other name I'll throw out there, if you want to get real sneaky in a 3K range, is Cole Turner. He's the slot receiver. He had a pretty good game the other day. They got him a couple of carries as well. Looks like they're trying to get him involved in the offense. Again, this is a super risky play, but if you're looking for someone at 3,300 with maybe potential some upside, I think you can maybe look at Cole Turner.
Yeah, and on NC State, you could go after Concepcion. Clemson's got a lot of good D-backs, but they have let up yards through the air this year at 246 per game. And if there's something we know about Concepcion, he is, high volume. He's got double digits every game so far. His big one was obviously against Western Carolina, which was terrible. But in his other games, kind of like Tennessee, what are you going to do when you're getting blown out 51-10? I still think there's some value in Concepcion from a high target standpoint and maybe being down a little bit too. The spread is high. So it's just 7,600 is a lot. It is. But I think you at least got to consider it.
All right. There you have it. One of my favorite games of the day, I actually like this game as a bet as well, not just for fantasy purposes, is this Arkansas-Auburn clash. Arkansas is underdogs, and I don't really understand why. Arkansas is the better team. I mean, they've looked good this year, up and down, but they look like they got some good players. This Auburn team, they're replacing their quarterback. They're going with redshirt freshman here. This Auburn team has a lot to figure out still. Auburn's traditionally a good program, but Arkansas, to me, what we've seen so far this year is the better team as underdogs. I think they're going to go into Auburn and win this game outright. And my favorite DFS play of the day by a wide margin is going to be Taylor Green. I mean, we've seen him already this year. He can get it done with his legs. He gets it done with his arms. He's got a clear-cut number one receiver. This Auburn defense is not the Auburn defense we're used to. They are beatable. This whole offense runs through Taylor Green. Why he's priced in the 7Ks to me is a little bit baffling. Being underpriced. He's going to be a little bit chalky, but he will be my number one play of the day. And I will be pairing him with his number one target, Andrew Armstrong, who's been back for 2 weeks and has looked spectacular. Again, he's under 7K. I mean, he's 6,900. He's right there. I would have had him in the 7K range. He might be the number one receiver on the board today. I'll have a lot of exposure to Armstrong paired with Green today. I would tell you Jackson's in play as well. He's been great this year. He's 7,200. I mean, it's a little tough to play all three of them. If you aren't going with Green and Armstrong and you want to get Jackson in there, I'm totally fine with that as well.
I'm with you. Taylor Green looks great. And, he was big for us against OK State. I think threw for over 400 yards that game. He was bad last week, only 161. It happens. They still won the game, so that he can learn from those lessons. Great opportunity today. Auburn 100th against the pass. Lets up almost 100 rushing yards a game as well. So you can attack Auburn the way that Taylor Green is going to want to attack them. So I like that. And you hit nail on the head on everybody except R1 that I got to throw out there. If you want to dumpster dive a little bit, Luke Haas is always in play. He had that one pretty solid game against OK State, late touchdown, 12.6 when he was coming in at 3,300. He's 3,200 today. He is a favorite in their passing game, even though he hasn't got a ton of looks. Never know at 3,200 versus an Auburn team today that ranks 100th against the pass. I like Luke Haas as well. You mentioned the good receivers. But if you want to just maybe throw one aside and dumpster dive a little bit, I think Haas is valuable.
You make a good point. I love Haas. I'm with you on that. And I'll add, there's a difference. Like when you go dumpster diving, you're looking for a guy who maybe has a shot. You do it with a guy who's 3,200, way less risky. He catches a touchdown, you're good. Don't take those risks with guys who are 4,500. There's a big difference. That extra $1,000 you can use elsewhere, right? But at 3,200, that's where I like to take the risk. And Haas is a guy, there's probably a handful of guys in this 3K range that have some upside, and Haas is definitely one of them. So
and as we all know, tight ends are on the field way more than fifth receivers. So
that's true.
We'll take that.
I like that call for sure. All right, let's keep moving to this afternoon portion of games. We got LSU and UCLA. UCLA's defense is bad, really bad. And LSU is going to have a field day today. It's a matter of how you're going to find exposure. I think Nussmeier's in play. Nussmeier looks like he's going to be an NFL quarterback. He's got weapons behind him. The issue with Nussmeier for a DFS perspective is he's not going to get it done with his legs. So he's really got to throw for like 3 or 4 to be worth it. Now, the running game has been bad, so he might. But I will highlight Cade Durham, who is 4,100. He looked really good last week. He's a freshman. Josh Williams has been so bad that there's a chance that they just hand over the backfield to Durham, and they just say, okay, he's the only guy that looks good, and then this might turn. And if that's the case, it's the last week you get him at 4,100. Yeah. So I think there's a value there with Durham as the LSU running back. This could be the turning point where this becomes his backfield against a really bad UCLA defense. I think you can find some sneaky upside in Durham.
I love it. And then, what's weird is why is AJ Swan $100 more than Nussmeier? His backup that's never played. And like you said, Nussmeier is a NFL kind of ready quarterback, the way they've been grooming him, putting him in a pro style offense. So I do like Nussmeier today. UCLA is the second worst pass defense on the slate. They're terrible. You got to attack them in the air. So that puts, Kyron Lacey very much in play. Highest receiver on the board. I get it, 8,100, but Nussmeier at 8,100 himself isn't as high as some of the other areas. You're going to be able to still build if you pair those two together. So I like that pairing. As far as LSU receivers go, you can get down there. Mason Taylor has got a good amount of volume, 17 catches in 3 weeks at only 4,700. He's their tight end. So we like that. And then also this guy, Aaron Anderson, has been pretty good too, getting 15 catches in 3 weeks and at only 4,200. So if you want to, get a third piece of that LSU pass offense, I think one of those two could work out well.
All right. I love it. We'll keep this train moving over to this Arizona State Texas Tech game. I think for our purposes today in DFS, this is a really interesting game. And the reason why is twofold. One, this Texas Tech defense is very bad. Mm-hmm. And they have gotten absolutely torched. There is going to be some opportunity here. Two, it's going to be windy in Texas. I don't know if it's going to be so windy that you can't play people. I think it's the wind. I think it looked worse earlier in the week than it does now. So I don't want to be overly scared off by the weather, but there is some windy conditions. Arizona State's quarterback, Leavitt, I think I'm saying that right, is the highest priced quarterback on the slate. And I think that's going to scare some people off. He's a dual threat quarterback that he runs and he throws. We've seen dual threat quarterbacks run and have big games already against this Texas Tech defense. I don't think they can get many stops. I think there's an opportunity where Levy could have a big game where everyone's going to have ownership on Skataboo, who, as they should, I will also be playing Skataboo today as well. But I think if you want to get different, go into Leavitt. I think he has upside as well. I don't think it'll be as popular. I will be targeting shares of Leavitt to get different today because you're going to be able to score against the Texas Tech defense. If you're going to pair anyone with them, I'll mention Jordan Tyson, who is the number one receiver. He's a little overpriced, but I would get some exposure to him in lineups that I'm playing Leavitt. Maybe the tight end as well, Mateer, but I'd probably rather some other of these value guys that we mentioned earlier. On the other side of the ball, I do want to mention Jalen Conyers, who's a transfer from Arizona State, so there might be a little bit of a revenge narrative in this game for him, playing his old team. But, of course, the obvious play here is going to be Taj Brooks, who's the number one player on Texas Tech. They feed him the ball. I think he'll have plenty of upside in this game as well.
Yeah, I like this game environment very much. Like we circled it earlier, highest total on the board, low point spread at 3.5. I think you got to get involved here. I'm on board with you. I think the quarterback is definitely in play here. Highest, but he's getting 30 carries per game. I mean, not per game, on the year so far. So about 10 carries a game. So he has that dual threat kind of action that we like. I think he nailed everything from both sides. I'll just end with this. Texas Tech, 119th against the pass, 106 against the run. They've allowed just about 500 yards per game on defense. They're bad, really bad. So what does that mean for me also? You got to get invested a little bit in the passing game on Texas Tech because they're going to have to be playing catch up. I think Baron Morton is in play. Taj Brooks, obviously. So keep Morton in your player pool for quarterbacks because I think they're going to have to put the ball in the air because they can't stop anybody on the other side.
There you have it. You are absolutely right about that. All right. Miami, Ohio, Notre Dame. I do think Riley Leonard's in play today.
Yeah.
He does run. The problem is I don't think it'll be a good game. So I don't want to be overexposed. I think the blow they could take him out. I think if there's a game for Leonard to break out, maybe it's this one. Other than that, I'm going to be pretty low exposed to this game today.
Yeah, Miami, Ohio, 107th against the run, letting up almost 190 a game on the ground. So Leonard showed you last week he can do it with his legs. So I do like Leonard. And then my other play because of that is the Notre Dame running back, Jordan Love. So those two are probably the only two that I haven't played in this game, or Jeremiah Love. I said Jordan, the quarterback from Green Bay. But he's been just not getting probably the volume he needs to explode, but he's still been, getting almost 19 points a game with low volume. So it's been, I don't think it's been because it's been game script a little bit why he didn't, right? Last week, 10 carries, they were up 66-7. Like they were up 35-0. So if it stays a little closer today, I think Jeremiah has his best game.
Boom. I love it. All right. I agree with you. Love's in play. And then we can move over to this Georgia Tech Louisville game. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this game. I think for good reason. I'm going to take a little different approach. Tyler Show, good play. He's a good player. 7,200. He's a value. I just didn't think his ownership, to what I'm seeing so far, looks a little too high for me. I'm not sure he has the ceiling game in him that you would need in a GPP, especially coming with ownership. If he was not coming with ownership, I would be there. I actually am more interested in Haynes King, who we know is dual threat. He can get it done with his legs or the arms. He hasn't really hit his full ceiling game yet. That's coming. And the receivers have been pretty good, and they're underpriced. I mean, Singleton is now coming around. He's had 2 good games in a row. This is a good Louisville defense, so this is not like a great game environment. But I do think, 1 or 2 guys on the Georgia Tech side, if this is they can keep it competitive, could be compelling. So I like pairing King with Singleton in a stack, or maybe King with Rutherford as well. But on the other side, on Louisville, there's a clear play. He's probably going to be the highest owned player on the slate. Ja'Cory Brooks was criminally underpriced, and he's the number 1 receiver on the team at 4,800. People are going to play a lot of him. I'm going to eat the chalk and just go there because he seems pretty safe with the amount of targets he's getting.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, I know they haven't played anybody of value yet, but at 4,800, 13 catches in 2 games. And what we saw and mentioned earlier, this Georgia Tech pass D isn't great. Even the worst quarterback in college football, DJ Uiagalelei, is passed for like 250 against them. Kyle McCord almost passed for 400. Arondé Gadsden, big frame like Ja'Cory Brooks, had a huge game. So I think Ja'Cory, he's going to be what do you think, 50%? He's going to be up there. Yeah, but I think it's worth it. Like you said, I am probably a little bit more bullish on Shao than you, only just from the standpoint of Georgia Tech's pass D is bad and the price is right. But I hear you. The ownership does scare me a little bit, so I'm not trending in that direction. Maybe 10 to 15% of my lineups. Haynes King, I really do like that. I don't think we know what Louisville is yet. They've played 2 terrible teams and won like 111-13. They'll be tested today. Georgia Tech has played good teams. This is their 4th game. Remember, they played over in Ireland. So they're moving. They're hitting midseason form. So they'll test Louisville a little bit today. And I like Haynes King the best. And like you said, I think you got to pair them up with both receivers are underpriced just because they haven't put Singleton at 5K, I think is my favorite. But Rutherford's in play too at 48.
I'm with you. I think you make a really good point. I would not be shy of putting maybe a look on Georgia Tech to win the game outright. They've been more tested. I feel like they're more informed. I think this Louisville team is good, but maybe they haven't been fully tested yet. So interesting game to watch today. All right, Rutgers, Virginia Tech. It's been a long time since there's been any fantasy relevance in Rutgers. I mean a very long time.
What was it? Like they lit up the Empire State Building on a Thursday night. Remember how it was back in Schiano's first kind of tenure with this team. So it's got to be a good 12, 15 years.
Maybe more.
Yeah, but that's the last relevance that I remember.
Yeah, but I will say, I think there's some relevance today. And it's that running back. And Kyle Monagay, I might be pronouncing his name wrong. He's a stud. They feed him the rock. He gets the ball a ton. He's 7,600, rightfully so. this Virginia Tech run defense is bad. And this is a really good spot for Montague to have a big game because he's going to be fed. I think there's going to be opportunity here. So I will definitely have some exposure to the Rutgers running game there. Their number one receiver, Miller, he's the number one guy. He does get enough targets at 4,200. The price is right. So you can consider Miller, but definitely nothing you need to prioritize there. Montague is for sure the preference. On the other side of the ball, I will have some interest in drones. I mean, I think maybe people starting to sleep on the fact that this is a quarterback who can run for 100 yards. Their passing game hasn't looked great this year, but I think just because of Jones' upside and potential pretty low ownership, he's in play, especially if Tootin is limited and they don't have full exposure to their running back. And if I am going to play Jones, you can pair him with either of these receivers, Lane or Felton. I actually might prefer getting sneaky, especially in big tournaments with Felton. Felton hasn't been there that good this year, but we know he's a big play threat. I think he's going to have a few good games this year. He's going to be pretty under the radar, but at 4,200, certainly a value.
Yeah, number one running back on the slate is Montague. For me, he's number one. You mentioned Vatek. Vatek was bad in rush defense last year, so it's kind of transferred over to this year as well. 190 per game. Looking at my notes, that's 112th out of 134 teams in the nation. It's not like they're playing, the best rushing teams either. They're letting up almost 5.1 yards per carry. And the best news about Montague, Rutgers runs it at 66% of the time. And he gets most of the carries. So Rutgers is very heavy, run pass. So Montague, top of the list. It's going to be hard for me to, look away and not consider him in probably 30 to 40%. I'll be heavy on him today, depending on how I can finish building. Like you said, I think on Vatek, I mean, Lane's always in play, even hasn't had a great year, but double digits in every single one of his games so far. And it's drones for me, number one on Vatek. I think he can have a big game running the ball. Rutgers, I'm very excited for them. I'm in New Jersey as well. The thing is, playing Akron, and who else did they have in the first game? Howard, I think. Hasn't really been, they haven't played that physicality or that test yet. I think Drones is a very physical quarterback that could test them a little bit. So Drones is in play for sure.
Yeah, and you're for sure right. This is Rutgers' first semblance of a test this year, where they had 2 cakewalks so far. So we'll see how this team looks against a real competition today. All right, USC Michigan, fun game, maybe the best game on the slate to watch. But because of Michigan's play style and defense, not a great game to target for fantasy purposes. So I will start by making this easy for you. I think I'm completely out on this game where I will have almost no exposure. The only guy I will even mention here is Zachariah Branch, who's the number one receiver at USC. This is a big play guy at under 6K. I think you can maybe sprinkle him in a lineup or two, but that'd be the only thing I'd be considering.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, and I'm with you. I think this is not a very attractive game from a DFS perspective, but it is from a watching perspective. I want to see what I could get maybe squeeze out of Alex Orji. They said he's going to start today. Davis Warren has been terrible. Orji is a running style quarterback. We don't know what we're going to get, but a $6,700 flyer at a quarterback in the super flex, I'm willing to test on because USC, I mean, their defense has been okay, but they've been able to. You're able to get yards on the ground against them over 100 per game. I don't know. Again, I think there's a little risk here now from a Michigan running risk that's worth doing the GPPs. By the way, I think it's worth just playing a little bit 5-10%. Where's Edwards? I don't know what's going on here. I know they played some tougher matchups, but I haven't loved what I've seen out of Edwards, and I haven't loved what I've seen out of the Michigan pass defense. They're 243 yards per game, and I thought Texas had their way moving the ball in the pass defense. They're not getting the pressure. Zachariah Branch at 5,900, I think, could have some value on USC.
Oh, there you have it. Last game of the slate, one that I am very interested in, and that is this Utah-Oklahoma State game. First of all, I'll say any week Oklahoma State's on the slate, I'm going to be interested. This is the ideal game style that we want for DFS. If you watch our show with any consistency, we love Cam Rising, and he can't stay healthy, and that's obviously a big issue. He has a hand injury. He's playing today. The reports are he's going to play. Is he 100%? I don't know, but he's playing. a quarterback playing against this Oklahoma State defense is going to have upside. One as good as Cam Rising is especially going to have upside. With Cam Rising locked into playing, I love the play. I think at 7,900, under 8K, I think Cam Rising has potential to have a ceiling game, and he has two clear targets in the passing game between Singer, who's the number one receiver, who hasn't been as good. I will have some exposure to him. My preferred is the probably best tight end in the country, Brent Queef, who they've been together. It feels like they've both been at Utah for about 10 years, and he is going to feed him the ball. So that would be my preferred stack. I'm going to be overexposed here to this Utah offense because I do think this game has some back and forth potential. But another popular play is going to be Micah Bernard, who I am with as well. He's their number one running back in Utah. They feed him the rock at under 6K. He seems to be underpriced. And then on the Oklahoma State side, it's no surprise. It's nothing new. It's the same guys we've been targeting. You know, Ollie Gordon's still priced up. The good news for Ollie Gordon this week is the ownership is going to come down. Did you believe eventually he's going to get there? Now would be the week to play him at the lower ownership. 9,700 is still a lot of money to throw out there for him when he hasn't shown a good game yet this year. But I think this passing game is squarely in play between Bauman and their big three receivers, Presley being the best, Stribling breaking out last week. He is certainly in play. And, of course, I will also have some exposure to Rashad Owens.
Yeah. I think you've nailed it perfectly. Let's just highlight this. Oklahoma State, 305 passing yards a game. That is 128th in the nation out of 134 teams. And it's not like they've played really dynamic passing attack. They played Utah State. We talked about. Oh, sorry, Utah played Utah State, but Oklahoma played Tulsa. Oklahoma State played Tulsa. They played South Dakota State. 305. It's not good. Like you said, Cam Rising is. If he's a full go, and they said he was a full go early in the week, but I've kept him at questionable. He's probably a top 3 quarterback on the slate today. You have to ignore the hand injury. If they think he's good enough to play, we can't assume that the hand's going to bother him while he's playing. So if he's good enough to play, roll him out there. And like you said, on the other side, Stribling's finally getting a little respect, moving up to the second highest priced OK State receiver. I like it. I think you're going to have to decide here, and it showed last week. Let's just be transparent on Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon was terrible. But that's because Bowman and Stribling were great. They put up 80 combined points. You're not going to be able to have, in my opinion, an Ollie Gordon day with Bowman and 2 or 3 receivers. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to pick and choose here. So if you're going to play Gordon, I think play him naked. Maybe you could – when Stribling was 4,500, 4,300, I could have. Now 5,900, I mean, it's going to be tough with Ollie still in the 9s. So just take that attack with Oklahoma State. It's going to be one or the other, it feels like today.
No, you hit the nail on the head with that. If you're going to play Gordon, to your point, if Stribling was in the 4Ks, then you could do it because you wouldn't have needed as high as a ceiling. But at 6K, it's hard to get 2 of them with Gordon at the price into the lineup. All right. That is a wrap on the DFS game-by-game side, but we're not done yet. Before we get you guys out of here, we're going to give you our favorite plays on the Underdog pick'em side. But do us a favor. Go ahead and smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Follow along with us every weekend. We'll track our wins and losses, how we did. We've been having a pretty good season thus far. So get on board this train with us throughout the season. But we want to follow these Underdog picks as well, the over-unders. Dave, we'll start with you. Any of these plays that you are targeting for today?
Yeah, another solid week. I think I was 1-1 overall. My notes, it just, we're getting there. I got Garrett Green over his rushing yards, but Dylan Gabriel, 305, he just landed short at, I think he was like high 290s. And it was the game script I thought they were going to blow Oregon State out. It just happened that they were able to get, some short fields and they weren't able to explode totally as I thought. But, it's been very good, Joel, is the point. And today I'm looking for a sweep. And there's a couple things out there. We've talked about guys that we love. And I don't know what game you're going to focus on, but one of the ones I'm going into is this Kansas game. And I do like the fact that we can get back Garrett Green over 45.5 rushing yards. He had to struggle to get there last week, but he got there. I'm going to double down on it. Kansas, you've been able to move the ball a little bit against them in the past. I'll take Garrett Green again over 45.5.
Garrett Green, I love it. Again, like you said, it's another great environment for him. You know, 45.5 seems low, and he's kind of like their whole offense, right? Everything goes through
Yeah.
him. So I'm with you on that call. You know, I want to get some exposure to the other green, right? We're right here. I think Taylor Green has a big day today. 68.5 rushing yards is a big number. I would take one of the two between rushing yards or passing yards. I think you can go over the passing mark as well in this game. I actually think I prefer the over 210 passing yards, but I would go either one. I want to get exposure to Taylor Green for sure.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I'm going to dive into another area where we have to attack, and that's Montrell Johnson. Over 72.5 rushing yards just seems way too low. Joel said he disappointed last week. He was right, but the worst rushing defense on the slate today, Mississippi State, allowing 213 rushing yards per game. I'm just asking Johnson to get a third of those. So at 72.5, I feel really good about this one. So I'll take Montrell Johnson over 72.5.
I love that play as well. Another play I mentioned on the DFS side that I'm going to go to today as well is leave it on Arizona State. This Texas Tech defense is bad. I want some exposure. I think everyone's going to Scatterboo. I think Leave It has a big game here. I think he's going to get it done with his arm and his legs. I actually like the over on both his passing number and rushing number. 40 yards rushing and 216.5 passing yards.
Love it. Love it. Do you have a third? I know you like to get out three sometimes. I think I'm sticking with my two. There were a few others that I might play later that I'll post, but for now, I think I'm going to roll with those two rushing props.
I'm with you. I'm sticking with two for today as well. That is a wrap for us for this college football show. Exciting week. I can't wait for these games to start. Before we get everyone out of here, Dave, do you have any game bets that you want to put out for the fans?
Yeah, I'm still working on my. I will get them out there. I will tell you, I got to stay away as much as I want to go there. I got to stay away from the WVU game just because they burnt me so bad last week. They had that game in hand. But if one, it just, I like Utah. If Cam Rising's playing, I like Utah. I think they're the more physical team. I think they're the better team. I think Oklahoma State's defense allowing almost 500 a game. They can't survive doing that. And Utah's the type of team that I think can get enough stops and score enough points. So that's an asterisk. As long as he's starting, I like Utah.
I like Utah as well. I'm with you on that. I mentioned it earlier. I'll mention it again. I really like Arkansas today. I think they're the better team at Auburn. I don't know why they're underdogs. They are on the road, but I think Arkansas goes into Auburn and wins that game. So give me Arkansas plus 2.5.
And what about our Scarlet Knights?
Rutgers. Well, what? I mean,
I can't bet on them.
We can't bet on them. I don't even know what the line is. Do you know what the line is?
They're getting 3.5 down in Vodtech. Vodtech's already shown some holes, losing to Vanderbilt early. They came back better last week at ODU, but I think it's a team that I think Rutgers has the momentum and mojo. So if you're outside of Jersey, I might sprinkle a few on Rutgers.
I like it. I'm with it on the Rutgers play. Good luck today, everyone. Big slate, 13 games. Report back next week. Let us know how you did, and good